that's really disappointing and frustrating in very many ways. Things have gotten better, but still not to the level that I would expect. It seems that we need to spend a lot, I mean, I don't mind being involved in my kids' education. I take that as a given, although teachers always surprise me when you get in touch with them. But I don't even know what to ask about. I don't know what I don't know and what kinds of things I need to know in order to get work done at home that we need to get done at home. That's getting a little better, but it still seems like there's some communication missing. I think in our case, improved communication would help a lot, plus whatever support teachers need to understand what to do and how to implement things. Given the percentages of special ed kids in the population, it was a little more than I expected it to be. It's really a significant number. It's about 1 in 7 children. And if a teacher has, I don't know, 100 kids at the high school during the day, that's a lot of special needs and different kinds of instruction that are necessary, which is very complicated. On the other hand, I guess, to be practical, I don't really care. I expect them to do what needs to be done because I want my kids to get the education that he needs to get. The biggest communication tool that the school offers at the high school level, I think, is the TeacherNet program. It's got great possibilities, but I think it's woefully underused. I can only imagine what's possible in it, but as somebody who professionally designs complex web applications, I have an idea of what kinds of things it can do, and I'll offer on television in front of all of you to help make that better, to help make that program be what it should be so that parents can find out what they need to know. I mean, it's not just even kids with IEPs. I don't think it's all that useful for people in the general education population. So I guess those are my main comments. There was a comment about parents being excited to be asked to do the survey and to know that was going on. I think one reason is, certainly from my own point of view, I was glad to know that it wasn't just us, that there was really something systematic, that there were problems throughout the system, because that somehow makes it seem like it's more likely that the problems will be solved. And so I wholeheartedly support the idea of this task force and hope that it can come together very quickly and somehow come up with some, I mean, I know committees sometimes take a long time and then nothing happens, although that's not always the case. But I hope to see some significant changes by the time school reconvenes in September. Thanks.
Yeah, I want to echo Stephanie's comments, thanking administrators for, and Ken especially, but everyone for their support of this survey. The survey is a special education survey, but the reason that we recommended that a task force be convened is, I think, that we need to think about education as inclusive. And I'm worried that if there's a recommendation that, you know, Ken, as great as he is, working on this problem, it kind of becomes, once again, a special education issue. I would love to have the school system look at this more structurally as an inclusion issue, a general education / special education, bringing them together. How can we make the systems work in a complementary way? How can we make the high school work for everyone? I worry that's why that if we don't think of things in an inclusive way, that it will kind of end up affecting some things, but not making the changes that perhaps ought to happen. I think we ought to have a bigger vision. And that's why we recommended a task force as opposed to, you know, getting together with some parents and talking about what they think ought to happen. I think we really believe it ought to be general education people and special education people getting together, thinking structurally about making the high school more inclusive and working for all the kids.
Well, I think I'd like to echo Amanda, because one of the things that I have found is that many of the things that we've used with our sons are useful to every child in the classroom. So inclusion really can benefit all the children in the classroom.
And you certainly see that at the lower levels. I mean, most elementary teachers will tell you that the good initiatives, the things that they use the most useful came out of special education.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you. I heard your boy was great last night.
Good night, Mark. Thanks for coming.
Thanks very much. Good luck. All right, Ken should be paying attention for this one.
Yeah, we hope Ken stays here for a couple minutes.
You know, the next item is the appointment of a director of student services.
I'd like to read this out of my notes rather than just winging it, as I often do. For the past year, Ken Kramer has served as interim director of student services following the retirement of Sally Smith in June of 2007. In his first year in this very demanding role, Ken has coordinated the services of special education K-12, has hired a new assistant director of student services, and has coordinated all of the special education programs with special emphasis on the programs within the system. In December, Ken reported on the special education programs in Belmont, and again this evening in May. Ken has made great headway in his first year in this very important and demanding role. I recommend to the school committee that Ken be named Director of Student Services for the Belmont Public Schools. He has worked diligently to ensure that the Belmont Public Schools comply with the requirements of state and federal regulations regarding special ed, and through his efforts, the Belmont Public Schools have satisfied several concerns raised by the Department of Education in the Coordinated Program Review. As you recall, there were a number of items that we needed to bring to compliance. Ken has followed through on that and has brought all of those items to compliance. In the most recent report we got, is we were in complete compliance on all the issues raised. That was about a year ago that they were raised. The system has also made good progress in the development of the in-house programs for emotionally and behaviorally handicapped students. These are the programs that Ken mentioned, the Bridge program at the elementary, Opportunity at the middle, and Campus at the program at the high school. And he will, and the staff will continue to improve and refine these programs. He met on a regular basis with Pat Alvin and me during the year, and is an integral part of his goals next year will be to meet with Pat and the new Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction so that there is a strong integration of regular ed and special ed services within the district. Massachusetts general law requires that this appointment be voted by the school committee, and I recommend that the school committee appoint Ken to this role.
So do we, is that like
A vote.
for a certain amount of time, or is it?
Yeah, then normally what I do, after, for example, principals are appointed by the superintendent, but in the case of a principal, it's usually a 2-year contract. We usually do that for a few years, and then we move to 3-year contracts. They're usually limited term contracts. This is not a tenurable position in Belmont.
I move that we appoint Ken Kramer, Director of Special Ed.
Student
Services. Thank you.
Second.
Discussion. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Okay. We have a new permanent.
Good, thank you. And I will meet with Ken, draft up a contract, and then we settle the rest of the details of the contract relative to salary later in the year. Okay. Thank you very much.
Ken.
And thanks, Ken. And it sounds like you have a great deal of work with Pat and me cut out for you and Bernadette. And, so it's a challenging task, and quite frankly, I think we do very, very well at it. But continually, I think there are new things that we need to take a look at and improve on. And certainly, I think the survey has given us a good handle on that. So thank you.
All right. Next item is FY08 budget report as of April 30th.
Ask Jerry to give us this report as of the third quarter plus a month.
Thank you. This is an unusual year. We do have a positive bottom line projected for the end of the year. We did not have to institute a budget freeze, first year that I can remember since I've been here. And basically, it's because we've had a surprising surplus in our medical insurance accounts and another surplus in the utility accounts. And both of those surpluses have bailed out the salaries and special education accounts. I should note that the salary account is projected to be $50,000 in the red. However, that is because we have made the decision to not expend $100,000 out of the school choice revolving account so that can be carried over to fund the FY09 budget, which was one of the items that helped us close the gap with the warrant committee number for the FY09. Had we used the $100,000 in the school choice balance, the salary account would have been in positive $50,000. The special education account is in deficit by $150,000. Again, $80,000 of that is our decision to not use a lab credit, so that can be carried over to next year, plus some additional lab credit that are sitting in our accounts. So the deficit in SPED would have been a lot less if we had not used that lab credit. The contracted services account is projected to be in deficit by $65,000. That's actually not surprising if you would go back to the earlier sheet that Dr. Holland passed out, where you see that contracted services last year expended over $400,000, but this year's budget is only $284,000. So that's an account that Ken and I are working to review carefully to see what's being charged to it and to sort that out for next year. The utilities, the combination of fuel oil and natural gas, you have to look at those two together, are projected to be a plus $60,000 surplus, and that's primarily driven by a very good bid price that we have as part of our collaborative bid through EDCO for natural gas. The reason you have to look at them together is because we budgeted the Winbrook heating to be natural gas this year. However, because of problems with Keyspan making the connection, we've gone through a full winter heating that building with fuel oil. So we're making charges against an account that had zero, while there was another account in natural gas, Winbrook, that had a big offsetting surplus. The electricity budget, I'm pleased to note, will be within budget, despite the large rate increase in January. We were fortunate enough to, when we budgeted for this year, to come close enough with that rate increase to make ends meet. And water and sewer, I think partly because of the ESCO effort that was done several years ago, and simply some other conservation. So we do have a positive balance in utilities. Medical insurance, we have a $300,000 surplus because we budgeted for the rate increase as of January 1 to be 4%, and the actual was only 3%. Plus the other big savings was we always budget for a certain amount of increase in membership in our transitions, and the increase in membership when we had the open enrollment for January was not as severe as what we had budgeted. The $300,000, keep in mind, it's only a 6% savings in a budget that's $5.4 million. So it seems like a large amount of money, and we're very grateful for it to bail out the other accounts. But within that large account, it's only 6%. The other non-salary items do have a $120,000 deficit, and those are detailed in the pages that follow, where we say projection of selected non-salary accounts. Some of those are textbook purchases, which are necessary. Others are items such as transportation. We had to transport a student to a agricultural vocational school that was not budgeted. Advertising for recruitment exceeded the account in central administration. Legal services, we had some special education legal services, some cases that exceeded the budget. Items such as that, and we're projecting those to be in deficit by $120,000. And that assumes that all the principals and directors who do have positive balances will be allowed to spend those balances down to zero. We've added a little bit more detail to our report. For the first time, I've added the utility projection worksheets that I use every year continuously to show you how we make these projections in the various utility accounts, fuel, oil, natural gas, electricity. Also in there is electricity projected for next year for '09, since we're worried about that rate increase. Assuming the same usage in kilowatt hours as this year, and assuming still another 10% rate increase January 1 from Municipal Light Department, We feel comfortable that we will be within budget barely for next year. This is a very early look-see, but it makes me more comfortable than I was considering a couple months ago. And then you have our munis reports, which are much cleaner than the old S&S reports, which you used to get. First, by salary, there are 19 pages of salary printouts by program, starting with the English program. These follow the same format that you have in the budget book. And then there's 16 pages of non-salary accounts, again by program, starting with English, and again, English continuing through the same format that you have in the budget book. So this gives all the detail, and this entire report with all this detail is being sent to the Warrant Committee Education Subcommittee members. They requested this level of detail, and we're happy to oblige. I'll take any questions on it that you may have.
For electricity, even though the rates have gone up, did our usage actually go down enough to make that much of a difference?
We projected for a 50% rate
But
increase.
some of that was 80%
Right.
for the last part of this year.
Our usage to date is up, from last year, is up by 1.8%. If the usage continues as, for the rest of the year as it was last year, for the entire year, it'll be up by 1.4%. But we just had enough of a budget increase. I mean, our budget went from 465,000, and we had a sizable surplus last year, to 501,000, and that was, we hit it right, so.
Okay. Just one number stood out, was the electricity projection for 2008, that page. November's usage was 500,000 kilowatt hours. Everything else is a lot less. What's up with
Yeah.
that?
This is partly when the bills are paid, too. I mean,
Oh, just the billing cycles?
it's a billing cycle, right?
Peter with the lights on?
Yeah, really. Holiday season, John.
The projections for next year's electrical rates, are those pretty much set at this point, or are they still moving around a little?
They're set from now until January 1 of 2009. The big increase that went into effect in January, actually there was a transition month there, and the actual rates went in, hit on February. We're averaging 14.8 cents per kilowatt hour. Prior to that rate increase, we're around 9 or 9.9 cents per kilowatt hour. Is quite a jump. But we're assuming it's going to stay at 14.8 until January 1 of 09, and then jump to possibly 16 cents per kilowatt hour. But we're on budget for that.
Anybody can explain in like a minute or less why they justify like 82% versus 50% for all the other rates?
No, I can't. There's your minute.
I never did understand that.
We're actually discussing with the municipal light plant about getting the elementary schools on the same rate that the high school and middle schools on. We've asked them to run the scenarios against both rates and give us the lower cost one. And there's a
count as one customer.
There's a good possibility that we will be able to switch over to the other rate that the high school and middle school has.
Well, that would be great.
It would be, yeah. I also like pointing out on the electricity projection sheet, we track way back to 2004, 2005, our total kilowatt usage, and it's dropped from 5.1 million kilowatts system-wide to 4.1 million kilowatts. This 20% savings is a direct result of the ESCO project. It's there, it's in hard facts, and it's saving us at these current rates many more dollars that would have been going out the window.
Thank you, Paul Solomon.
Yeah,
And that whole committee. They
And the whole
worked hard.
committee, right. I just want to thank Jerry for the report and for the thoroughness of it, and also that, once again, with, the funding as it is, that we've come in, within budget.
Yes.
In addition to Jerry's report being thorough, I want to thank him for its clarity. It's very easy to move through it and understand exactly why each thing has moved in the direction that it has moved in a succinct fashion, so thank you. I'm sure that's not easy with that many accounts.
Yeah, there's a lot of balls in the air, and several of them are quite big. And they each have their own sense of variability. So Donna Pini contributed greatly to this, especially on the salary projections. where she goes through the budget line by line, projects the number of remaining payrolls, sits down with me, we go through that item by item and summarize all that work in one paragraph. So,
All right, thank you very much, Jerry.
you're welcome.
Next item.
Your item.
My item. We're
Good
right on schedule, too.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I didn't have anything real specific. It was just more of a get a feeling of what we liked about the budget process. I want to time box this into, 15 minutes or so, because I know we could go on forever in some of these things. But what went well with the process? What kind of pieces of information did you want, or did you find that other people, like other committees or the parents, what did they want? Maybe doing things in different order. I mean, we've been doing things, the order we've been doing things has been just set for a couple of years or decades or something. And what else? What did we think of, I don't know, maybe the exercise where we chopped out a bunch of programs and got the community all in a frenzy?
That was fun.
Perhaps you could have, done the exercise without so much pain. Elizabeth?
Well, I want to say that one of the things that didn't happen this year that's happened in previous years is that we did not meet as a committee with the Warrant Ed Subcommittee. And I felt that was not a good thing. I think it's very helpful for us as we work through the budget process and think about what we're doing and where we're going, to interact with a committee that is there to be thoughtful and informed about our budget and to ask the hard questions in a setting where we get to, if there are things we need to work out, let's work them out and move forward in a positive manner. So next year I'd like to see us meet with them. And I don't think we need to meet with them a lot, but I think once or twice as we come into the moment where the budget becomes public is an extremely important thing to do. I'd like to see that happen.
I really agree with that. And the other group that I would add to that is the Board of Selectmen. In the past years, we've usually met with the Board of Selectmen at least once, if not twice or three times,
Yes.
in executive session, or an open session, depending upon what the issue may be. A collective bargaining, of course, would be an executive session. But I just think that's also a valuable kind of thing, to have the school committee and the Board of Selectmen, both of which are the highest elected groups in town, to meet and talk about their budgets, which of course are the totality of the budgets in the whole town. So I just think that's really important to do.
So the Warrant Ed Subcommittee had people at a lot of our meetings this year. I don't remember that happening in the previous few years.
They used to do that in
Yes.
years past. I remember Wally Llewellyn must have come several years with his notebook, and Pat Bruce and others, yeah. So they had done that. Maybe they hadn't done it in the immediate few years, but going back a number of years, they had done that.
But that's different than having everybody at the table.
Absolutely,
Yeah, that's true.
right.
Yeah.
I was going to say, one of the things I appreciated was the members of the Warrant Committee, Subcommittee, who did come to some of our budget hearings. And I think it was pretty clear to me that one of the pieces that wasn't really working this past year was our relationship with the Warrant Committee, Subcommittee. And I think at our 7 a.m. meeting, or whenever that was, we actually had a bit of a conversation with each other about how we kind of both felt like it wasn't working, and we'd like to, going forward, think about how together we can make it work better. So I think that's something we really should follow up on, having conversations with them, both from their perspective and our perspective about how we can work better together. And from our perspective, I think one thing that we ought to do is to encourage them to come to those meetings, the budget hearing meetings that we have, both the initial presentation and then the following 3 meetings where we're reviewing the budget, and as well as the ones that come after that. But it seems like it would be very efficient to have them in the room at the same time that we have the various administrators for the particular area of the budget that we're reviewing in the room, so that if there are questions that Warrant Committee, Subcommittee members have, they can ask them then when the relevant people are in the room, so that we don't have to take other time to try and get questions answered and to try and get to administrators to answer very specific questions. If the whole process feels like it could be a lot more efficient if we encourage them to use that time that we already have built into our structure to meet some of their needs for additional information from us.
I like that, just because we're on the room, might as well.
And the curriculum directors are here too,
Right,
and principals, yeah.
and whatever the particular area that we're reviewing, we've always got any administrator that would have any authority in that department and they're able to answer any questions that people have to ask.
Leslie?
I finally went to the mandated training for new school committee members after being on school committee for a year. Every other one, there was a problem, a failing problem, a car problem, some other problem, basketball game problem. So I can read the laws, and I had, but it was still great from a practical point of view to listen to other school committee members and to the director, Glenn Kuchar, talking about what he recommends is not any part of the laws. And one of the things he recommended that I thought was great, and he said whenever this happens in a town, the principals are always thrilled, is to have the school committee or a subcommittee. Many towns, most apparently, have a finance subcommittee of the school committee. Meet with the principals and say, what are your needs? Not that there's anything that they wouldn't tell the administration, it's the same thing, but just to be asked apparently goes a long way to goodwill and an openness. Because a few teachers have said to me, I never know what's going on until, I read it in the paper, or, they don't live in town and they don't get the Belmont paper. So I think that'd be a good way to meet with principals, and they could have faculty there if they wanted to, for all I can think would be a fine idea. But to start that way and to have us meet, this is another recommended practice, to have us meet with the administration before Penn has put the paper, before Jerry starts with one calculation about the budget, to talk about the priorities that the school committee sets for the next year's budget. I'm completely making this up. It could be class size of 25. It could be, world language from kindergarten through infinity and beyond. Whatever it is that we as a school committee feel are priorities. If that happened last fall, I missed it. What I recall was a lot of meetings about policies and other things, and then there was a presentation of the budget, but that there be that meeting up front so that there isn't that kind of getting something that we haven't had input into, which most of it is expertise we don't have, but certainly the kind of, we as a school committee feel that this is an important thing to have be the budget priorities. Could be done with either subcommittee or the full committee. Almost done.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, I had another thought too about the budget. Oh, this is just, I think about little Ann was talking about having the principals and the department heads here for different sections. I feel badly for Jerry. He might not mind it, but it's like for 3 sessions, Jerry talks for 2 hours, and it's a lot of talking. It's supposed to be exhausting. And 2 quick suggestions I have, and I don't know that they're technologically possible. One would be to project the budget sheets so that people who are in the audience and don't have them have it. But also just for variety's sake, so we're not all, people who watch this on television must be bored to death. They're looking at the top of everyone's head. Jerry's got to look at the numbers, and we're looking at our numbers, and it must be comical if you were looking at it from afar.
Comatose, you said?
Both. So if they could be projected, and the English department head could talk about the English budget, with Jerry there as, they're not mathematicians. Jerry's the money guy and the math guy. But I think that would add some variety to it that would make it feel like more participatory than it has been. So.
Yeah, I think that's very possible to do. Because a lot of times what happens is the curriculum directors come, and if there's no question, then, they haven't said a word.
Wasted night for them.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I wanted to mention was that we have something other school districts don't have, and that's the strategic plan.
Mm-hmm.
We take it for granted because we've had it for 15 years, but most school districts don't have that, and so that becomes our guiding document. When you talk about goals and where we're going, the principals and the curriculum directors are usually starting with that document when they build things. And it feeds into something that Ann had said. We had a conversation, Ann and John and I, one day about this whole thing, and Ann made the comment that it'd be very nice in the narrative, whenever possible, to build in that thread of what the strategic plan is as part of explaining why the budget is the way it is. And it ties in with what you're saying, but in a different way, because we have this document, which other districts don't have.
Right. And the audience might not know about, and as new school committee members, we certainly don't have committed to memory, and
Well, it's been a whole year.
I think it would be great to certainly to weave it in and have it be a part of it. But I think it also would be a good idea to just refresh everybody's recollection in an open meeting and say, these are the key points, and we would like to have the budget reflect those key points, just so that it's all very open and current.
It also reinforces the fact that we do have a plan. A lot of
Yep.
people in town don't realize
Right.
that, we're not,
Right.
we, the administration, is not making this up year to year.
Yeah.
This is a well-thought-out thing.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I just have to get back to sort of your opening comment about, here we are, we go through this process and we cause all this kerfluffle and, I think that's been my greatest frustration since I joined the school committee, or I should say since I started paying attention to the school budget, which was actually slightly before then, and I have to say up front, I don't know what the answer to this particular problem is, but there's a lot of the way things have been done with, here's what we think we would like, then we get some other number and we have to sort of say, well, okay, if you give us that number, here's what goes away. There's, a huge hubbub about what may or may not go. We start to tier things. We start to sort of break this all up into pieces. And then when we do what we have done for the last several years, which is cut and paste and find one-time funds and, move things from point A to point B and don't buy textbooks so we can have another teacher, but nobody really remembers that we're not buying the textbooks because, it just ends up that everybody sort of feels like the process wasn't satisfying for them, that everybody ends up slightly frustrated. Either frustrated because in the end things work out okay, and why did you make me so upset when things are now going to work out okay, or frustrated by having followed the process and, and feeling like having followed it and spent a lot of time with it, you're again sort of dissatisfied with what has been swept under the rug. And is no longer out there in full view, like textbooks and and professional development funds and other things. And I don't have an answer to that, but I know that it's not just frustrating for us, it's frustrating for anybody who's watching the process. And it gives people a bad taste about the process itself as a whole, that it immediately creates a defensive nature to our conversations about the school budget. And like I said, I don't know what to do about that, but it clearly is the most frustrating part of this process from my point of view.
Did you raise your hand up?
Yeah, well, I agree that it is a very frustrating piece of the process. Unfortunately, there is this whole process that has to go on about kind of honing in on what revenue we're actually going to have. There are all these necessary adjustments that you just, when you're projecting something that's that far in the future, you can't be that exact about it. So no matter what we do, there's always going to be this sort of, are we going to have this much or are we going to have this much? And that effort to kind of understand, well, if we don't have this, what's it going to mean? And then it does give, for people watching that process, not understanding the natural cycle, it does just sort of reinforce that, they're just going to find the money, they're just going to find the money perception. And that is unfortunate. There's one piece of it that I would say that we did differently this year that I don't think was particularly effective or useful, which was when we made the $1.6 million reduction from the original budget the superintendent presented us, making the effort through the listservs and all to get that information out to people without really the accompanying explanation of what they might expect to see in the process, and that sort of, escalates the anxiety. There's we're forever trying to figure out how to make people aware of what's going on, get them to pay attention and take action, and that particular piece seemed like we went a little too far in one direction of getting people to pay attention without giving them enough information about what was going to be happening next. One of the pieces that I wanted, before Diane had spoken, I had my hand up, I wanted to elaborate on some of what Elizabeth said, which was actually in response to Leslie, and talking about sort of the goals that we set. I think it's one of the things that I would like to see us consider doing in the budget book is including that strategic improvement plan, making people more aware of that, and also all the work that was done in the superintendent's task force on the communicating the challenges facing the Belmont Public Schools, which then became sort of termed the challenge paradigm. Conveying to anybody who opens that budget book that we have this overall strategic improvement plan that was that articulates our goals, our vision, our mission, all of that for the next 5 years. And that's a document that was that was a collaboration of administrators, school committee members, parents. I think there were. Trying to think if there was staff on there, but anyway, that was a collaboration that defines where we're headed, and everything that we're doing is driven by where we're trying to get. We have a very definite sense of where we're going, and every year we've got the school improvement plans. We've got the individual buildings and departments writing their plans that feed into the district's plan. It's all woven together, leading us where we're going, and each one of those departments has their plan of action that's very well articulated direction. Incorporating that more into the budget book so people understand how much of a direction we do have, and then with the challenge paradigm work, incorporating that in and communicating to people those external pressures that are also driving everything that we do, the mandates and expectations and all of that, so that people can understand as they flip through the budget book that every expenditure that they're seeing is either trying to help us get towards our goal or is something we have to do because of these other pressures that are on us, and helping people better understand how it all fits together and why it is we're proposing what we're proposing, whether it's viewed as an enhancement or whatever it is. This is why we're proposing it. So that that's something I'd like to think about, how we could do that, how we could do a better job of communicating with anybody who is tuning into our budget process and opening our budget book, and really using that budget book in a way that we haven't before as a real tool for communicating with people.
On the budget book, now it's online, so way more people are seeing it. So it seems like it's got to stand more on its own as an independent document, and weaving these things in, because they're just not going to get the explanation of a human talking to them.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is that we spend a lot of time on the budget and the numbers, and we don't spend a lot of time on the narrative, and I think that's really true. I think putting in the blueprint, the strategic plan, the annual plan, and how those pieces are threaded into this whole thing is really a good idea. It does take some time, though, to present that, edit it, and put it in writing. But I also agree that once we put it out there, then it's there for people to see, and it's a good communication tool.
Too, I think.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Well, we would hope.
Have you seen the town budget book? Each
not.
department has a nice couple of page narrative.
Do they? No, I haven't seen it. Yeah. Yeah, it's, I don't think it's ever sent over to us.
As the new school committee member, but a veteran of 5 or 6 years of sitting through all the budget meetings, what I've been struck by, this feeds into what you were saying, is that every year there's some 1 or 2 hot topics that people get whipped into a frenzy about, and rightly so. I mean, they're concerned about it, but there always needs to be somebody who stops and says, okay, this is what the process is. And to explain it, that it isn't going to be an easy thing, it's not something that's going to happen tonight or at the next meeting, and how all these things fit in with the strategic plan and the task force paradigm, those documents aren't changing. The budget stuff's going to change all the time, but if there's a way of getting that out there so that people can see it in multiple ways, whether it's online or newsletters that the principals can do, so people know that there is a plan, that there is a goal, we're trying to figure out how to do this, and to get away from using that found money thing, because that's what just really gets people upset, is they're always going to find money. Well, it's not that they found it, it's not that it fell off the Brinks truck, and gosh, isn't this great, is that it takes a lot of work to go and figure out where you're going to move money from here to here, and that when you're moving it, it's going to be taken away from something else. And how is that process gone through, and how do all these groups of people, the committee, school committee, and the department, the curriculum directors, figure out how these pieces are going to move around?
Well, I just want to sort of build on the idea of, the budget book for next year. One of the thoughts I have is that the budget book, if it's going online, there could be a whole packet of links to the strategic plan, to all these pieces we're talking about, that make it so that it's not a lot of work for administration to pull these extra pieces together and group them. And I guess I just want to say that I want to make sure that whatever direction we take, it's not a huge burden for the administration in terms of time. Like, I don't know how, the numbers are really important, the thought process, the sorting process, I get the feeling the narrative has been something that has taken a little bit of a back seat, and maybe just, maybe even people could pay a little more attention to this year, but I guess I just want to put out there the idea that I also don't want people to feel too burdened. And I think also we as school committee people could take some of that responsibility on ourselves and weave a narrative as we interact with the town. That if we need to, the interaction between the budget book and the town, we can be part of that process of weaving the narrative and weaving the goals and the issues together. So just wanted to get that out there.
Well, from my point of view, and I've been through the budget process 20 times, and I'm glad this is my last. I would say that in the most recent years, I think I've found the process much more rancorous than it has been in the past. I find that there's a lot of undue criticism, unwarranted criticism, and it's personal in some cases. I find that as we've mentioned, there has not been a direct talking to of the two groups. There's been a lot of comments back and forth, and I just think that's not at all helpful in terms of trying to find some resolution, trying to work together. The thing that I find continually vexing is that in every measure that the town tries to take of what is most important for this as a community, the public schools come out as the #1 priority. It's the vision, it's the most important thing, and I think you would be hard-pressed to show that in terms of what the budget shows. It just does not show up in terms of what money is allocated for the public schools. And we've heard tonight a report in terms of some other things that could be done. And my sense is it's like everything else. There just isn't enough funding to get the stuff done that we would need to get done. So somehow or other, I think that needs to be addressed with the town, and how the school committee and the PTOs and the parents that really care and community members that really care can be communicated with and get some action on that is a critical piece, because it's just not happening. And you always hope that the budgets will get better. We seem to slide by, but the budgets are not adequate. They're just not adequate. And as you move forward, you're going to find that out more and more. And I think the rancor that we receive as a school committee and as a school administration in this process is not at all helpful in trying to come to a resolution of this.
Jerry, did you say you had some things you wanted to say?
And you were going to say something.
Yep.
Well, I was going to mention just one more piece that we might want to include in the budget process is something that parents ask for all the time. Every year in the budget process, there's a new group of parents who are just tuning in and have a whole learning curve, and they don't realize things that have gone on in the past. And one of the things that ultimately people get to asking for is that list of things that we've lost over the year. What is it that's kind of been chipped away, that gets no longer mentioned once it's out of the budget, or people don't realize that we have been chipping away at things over time, that the budgets haven't been okay. And, to sort of save the time of parents having to ask for that every year, to just have that as something.
We actually have a list on that.
Right,
It's a
yeah.
question of, associating the right year on that, and certainly if I go back through some of the many sets of notes that I have, I probably can locate a lot of that. I know Pat's done some work on collecting that information too. Yeah, I'm sure we can do that.
Okay. Was this
You
useful?
got enough to work on?
Yeah, I got right on that. Was this useful?
Yes, I thought it was useful.
All right, next item is consent agenda.
Reports and subcommittees?
Did I miss that? Oh, reports and
sitting at the bottom
subcommittees.
of the page.
I was used to the block
Not that I have
text.
anything
No,
to
you're
say.
doing what I used to do, just sort of flip over one of the agenda items.
And hope nobody notices.
We were almost out of here.
Sorry, you were always ready to entertain a motion to adjourn at any
No,
moment.
right at the beginning.
I just thought we ought to give other people the opportunity.
All right, Diane, do you have any reports of subcommittees you're on?
Capital Budget Committee is finished for the year.
Okay.
All right.
Yay.
Warrant committee will go on. Tomorrow.
Already
we
is
meet for
not
something.
finished.
Community Preservation Act, I think, is the #1 topic. Lori?
Youth Commission, we're having our family cookout on Saturday, March 29th, here.
March?
Saturday, May
May
29th. Get those M months off mixed up. So, and the Youth Commission, Friday is our last evening at the Youth Center for the incoming sixth graders. That's it.
The Belmont Special Education Advisory Council hasn't been doing anything, so I have nothing to report.
We have Appreciation Night.
I'm joking. Making sure they're still.
Uh-oh, be careful, Amanda's gonna be after you.
And the Appreciation Night is next Wednesday, the 21st. 21st?
Yes.
21st. Yeah. Okay.
John, we had an EDCO board meeting last week, part of which honored those board members retiring, such as Peter. And there's a retreat planned in the summer for the board, this sort of further thinking about the direction that the communities that participate in EDCO would like to see EDCO move.
Okay. Anything else? Good. Now the consent agenda.
I'll move the consent agenda.
Second.
Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Sure it is, but.
Abstained. Good. That's it.
Oh, all in favor, so.
Minutes.
None?
I'm sorry, there's,
I'm still working on that.
It's all right.
I have to figure out how to.
all right, next meeting, next scheduled meeting is June 3rd. We will continue our executive session after this, discuss some collective bargaining contract issues. And we will not return from executive session. I think that's it. See you next time.